As he's grabbing the bag, shots are fired.
Who shoots the shots that are fired?
Michael Boatwright.
Where does he shoot him from? What side of the car?
Driver.
So if XXX is in the driver's seat and Michael Boatwright is in the driver's side, the shots are coming onto XXX's left side or right side? Which side?
Yes.
Robert Allen, one of the 4 men convicted in the 2018 murder of XX, walked out of prison in October 2023. After cutting a plea deal and agreeing to testify against his co-defendants both before and after his release, he ended up giving police, prosecutors, and even a jury the most detailed inside version ever pulled from that Dodge Journey case. The kind of testimony that changed how the entire case was viewed from the inside out. According to Allen, everything started on June 18, 2018, when Dwayne Ricardo Enfroy, the rapper known as XXXTentacion, allegedly withdrew around $50,000 in cash from a Bank of America branch in South Florida.
As he's grabbing the bag, shots are fired.
Who shoots the shots that are fired?
Michael Boatwright.
The cash was stuffed into a Louis Vuitton bag, setting off a chain of events that would spiral into something far bigger than anyone expected. From there, Enfroy drove over to Riva Motorsports, a motorcycle and watercraft dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Riding with him was his step-uncle, Leonard Kerr, sitting in the passenger seat of a black BMW i8. Enfroy was just 20 years old at the time, walking around the dealership looking at motorcycles like it was a normal day, not knowing what was building around him. Earlier that same year, he had already been seen at the location and never made it back in the same way again. At that same time, 4 men from Fort Lauderdale were rolling through South Florida in a rented black Dodge Journey SUV. They weren't just driving around, they were allegedly armed, masked up, and moving with a plan to hit whoever they thought they could target. The group included Dedrick Devon, Shea Williams, Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, and Robert Allen. Williams was 22, Boatwright was 22, Allen was 22, and Newsom was the youngest at just 20, the same age as the man they would later encounter. Williams, known on the streets as Chucky, already had a long record, including arrests for grand theft, burglary, assault, and cocaine possession. Even with all that history, he was on probation and working as a tattoo artist with 4 children at home. He was also the one behind the wheel that day.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, all 3 of them had.
Trayvon Newsom do after he grabs the bag.
And the one who locked onto a major clue in the parking lot, the BMW i8. Williams said he had already seen Enfroy before at a probation office, and he even remembered the car from Instagram posts. That connection turned into something deadly serious when he pointed it out to the others in the SUV. He quickly pulled up Enfroy's Instagram on his phone and lined it up with what they were seeing in real life. The same car, the same look, parked right there in front of them. That match allegedly became the moment the group settled on their target before anything even started. The SUV they were using had been rented just the day before, tied to a plan Williams himself pushed to get a vehicle specifically for robberies. To keep things moving, they used a woman named Tony Robinson to secure the rental because Allen was the only one with a valid driver's license and needed to be the one behind the wheel for the operation. Everything was being coordinated step by step like they were checking boxes before making a move they couldn't take back. Dietrich, the plan as Allen would later testify, was loose, chaotic, and completely unstructured. They were just driving around South Florida looking for someone to rob. Uber drivers, random people, anyone they could spot on the way. That morning, they weren't specifically hunting for Enfroy at all. The idea was simple and reckless. They wanted any target they could get their hands on. All 4 of them were expecting to be armed, and all of them were supposed to have masks ready. Allen had a Springfield .40 caliber handgun. Newsom had a Smith & Wesson .38 revolver, and Williams carried his own .38 revolver with a distinctive hammer, bow, and trigger design. Boatwright had a .22 caliber short-barreled rifle, making the group heavily armed as the Dodge Journey rolled through Dixie Highway, and everything started to shift. When Williams spotted the BMW i8 in the parking lot, things changed fast. Even if nobody said it out loud, it didn't need to be said. Williams told Allen and Newsom to go inside and confirm who it was, while Boatwright and Newsom pushed Allen to go in with Williams to hear it directly from the source. Inside, Allen walked past Enfroy, who was browsing with Kerr, and Allen believed Enfroy didn't even notice him at all. While inside, Williams also bought 2 black neoprene masks at the counter.
Okay, so what was in the bag?
Money.
How much?
$50,000.
A detail that made everything feel even more tense and calculated. Back in the SUV, Allen immediately said it wasn't a good idea at all. He told them he and Williams had already been picked up on store surveillance cameras, raising the risk higher than they seemed to care about. Boatwright and Newsom hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of it. Then Williams pushed the pressure back on them, asking if they were scared, and Boatwright eventually responded with something to the effect of, "All right, we're gonna get him." Newsom agreed, but Allen refused to get out of the vehicle. He knew he was already on camera and didn't want any more exposure to the risk. Boatwright and Newsom threw on masks and hoodies, while Williams stayed locked at the wheel, keeping the Dodge Journey positioned and ready. The SUV rolled across the street and parked, sitting in place for 8 minutes and 35 seconds of complete stillness and tension that later became a major focus in court. That exact waiting period was caught on surveillance footage, and at trial the lead prosecutor, Pascal Silas, played it in silence for the jury the entire time. 8 minutes and 35 seconds of nothing but waiting, showing what prosecutors described as premeditation unfolding in real time. When Enfroy and Kerr eventually came out of the dealership and entered the BMW, Williams immediately moved. He pulled the Dodge Journey forward and cut off the BMW's exit in a calculated block that left them trapped. Boatwright and Newsom jumped out fast. Boatwright approached the driver's side window holding a rifle, while Newsom moved in close at the same time. After grabbing the bag, Boatwright allegedly pointed the weapon directly toward Enfroy, raising the threat level instantly. Newsom circled around, going for Enfroy's gold chain, yanking at it but failing to remove it. Then he ran around to the passenger side and got into the BMW itself, grabbing the Louis Vuitton bag containing the $50,000. Kerr, who was in the passenger seat, was told to stay still but instead ran away down the road and survived the encounter. Newsom returned to the vehicle with the bag, and at that point the robbery was considered complete by the group. But everything escalated in seconds after that moment. Then 3 shots struck Enfroy in the neck. 2 of the bullets remained inside his body, while another fragmented, damaging the upper lobe of his left lung and grazing his aorta in the process. Enfroy was unarmed and never reached for anything during the encounter. The bag had already been taken when the shots were fired, and he was later pronounced dead at Broward Health North Hospital at 4:51 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The 4 men took off in the Dodge Journey, but the getaway didn't go smooth. They crashed the vehicle during the escape and still managed to make it back to Allen's place on 17th Court. Williams later split off and grabbed an Uber on his own from the same location, separating himself from the rest of the group. Once they regrouped, they opened the bag and started dividing everything up. The cash was split into 4 piles, with Williams, Boatwright, and Newsom each taking about $15,000. Allen, who had stayed back in the car during key moments, received $5,000. Boatwright pushed back hard, arguing Allen hadn't done enough during the incident to deserve an equal cut, creating tension inside the group right away, but the rest of the items were quickly scattered.
Somebody was like in shock. Besides Chucky, he was not in shock. That's what I said. Chucky wasn't in shock. He didn't really care.
Guns stayed with Boatwright and Newsom, along with the Louis Vuitton bag, bank slips, and even the key fob linked to Enfroy's car. Everything was essentially divided up and carried off after the drive back from Riva, like they were trying to erase the trail behind them. Not long after, they learned through their phones that Enfroy had died. That news hit the group in real time, but what came next made things even more intense. Cell phone videos started surfacing showing Williams, Boatwright, and Newsom flashing stacks of $100 bills, dancing and smiling just hours after the shooting. Williams was arrested about 48 hours later during a traffic stop in Pompano Beach. He was wearing orange sandals and a white tank top, the same outfit seen in the Riva surveillance footage and even in his own Instagram post from that day, like he hadn't changed a thing or tried to hide it. He hadn't deleted posts either, leaving a digital trail behind. Boatwright was later arrested on July 5th on separate drug-related charges, tightening the net around the entire group as investigators connected the pieces. The murder warrant was served to him in jail. 5 days later, on July 10th, Allen was arrested in Georgia. On July 26th, more than a month after the crime, he had traveled there with Boatwright before the two split in different directions. Trayvon Newsom later turned himself in at his attorney's office on August 7th. He was the final one brought into custody after a widening manhunt. All 4 were charged with first-degree premeditated murder and armed robbery with a firearm. They were indicted by a grand jury in July 2018. The entire case unfolded on camera from the moment Williams entered the dealership to the moment the SUV vanished down the road. Detectives had footage of the masks being bought, the waiting in the lot, the ambush forming, and the getaway unfolding in real time. That evidence left investigators with a near-complete picture of what happened. A robbery that was already in motion still ended with a 20-year-old shot dead in his seat, and the missing detail had to come from someone inside the car. That person was Robert Allen, helped plan the logistics of the vehicle rental, took the $5,000 and stayed silent to police for weeks. None of that made him innocent, and prosecutors knew it right away. What it made him was useful, because the story he could tell, if he told it fully and truthfully, was exactly the kind of account that could lock in 3 first-degree murder convictions and change the entire case in court. Getting him to tell it fully and truthfully was handled by a detective named John Curcio, known as Mongo. It all went down in a Broward County interrogation room that Allen would later say made his claustrophobia kick in heavy. The interrogation footage has since been posted online and spread widely, showing the formal start with introductions, sworn statements, and Alan's attorney present while Curcio stayed calm, methodical, and locked in from the beginning. What followed over the next half hour was a slow, pressure-filled breakdown of his account. At first, Alan hedged constantly, throwing out "I think" and "I guess" when asked for details, trying to stay uncertain. Curcio kept pressing him every time, calling out the gaps and pushing him to tighten up his story. He pointed out that small lies make the big picture collapse, telling Alan that fingerprints were already tied to the car and that surveillance footage already placed him inside the Driftwood apartment complex. He also referenced how Chucky Williams had already given his own version of events. Bit by bit, under that pressure,
The easiest way to start talking about the case you're under arrest for, which is XXX's case, let's talk about the car, the Dodge Journey.
Alan started filling in the missing pieces, building out the story piece by piece until the full picture began to form. He breaks down how Williams set up the rental with Tony Robinson's name used on the app because the others couldn't get it done. He lays out how they pulled up to Chucky's house before heading toward Riva, just chilling inside, watching TV, talking about masks like it was part of some routine plan that was already in motion. He also describes rolling up Dixie Highway toward the dealership when everything started to line up in real time. When Williams first spotted the BMW and said it was him, Alan says that's when the shift really happened. He was told to go inside and confirm the identity, and he did exactly that. He names the weapons too, placing them back at Chucky's house and confirming who had what, like everything was being mapped out step by step. He even describes the moment in the parking lot when Williams commented on Unfroy's jewelry, bracelets, necklaces, rings, and how Alan warned in the car that it wasn't a good idea, but nobody really listened or slowed down. He goes on to describe the return to the house, stacks of cash split into $10,000 piles, and the quick division. That followed like it was already decided. Then came the drive back from Riva, sitting in the aftermath of something they couldn't take back, realizing what had just gone down in real time. The interrogation ended up giving investigators the raw bones of a confession. The plea deal, nearly 4 years later, added the rest of the picture, giving it structure and detail. On August 12, 2022, Alan pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed robbery with a firearm, while the first-degree premeditated murder charge carrying mandatory life was dropped in exchange for his full cooperation and testimony at trial against Williams, Boatwright, and Newsom. Alan understood exactly what that deal meant from the start. He knew one thing from the start: he would eventually go home, while the others would not. The joint trial opened on February 7, 2023, in Broward County Circuit Court before Judge Michael A. Usen, setting the stage for everything that followed. Alan took the stand. Very next day, February 8th, and stayed there through February 13th, giving 4 full days of testimony that prosecutors leaned on heavily. What he provided was the missing frame that surveillance footage alone could not fully explain. The cameras had only shown 2 masked figures moving around a car, but Alan told the jury exactly who those figures were behind the masks. He broke down the planning inside the vehicle, the decision to wait, and how Williams directed the entire situation from the driver's seat like he was controlling every move. He also described Boatwright and Newsom gearing up with weapons, the quick decision to block in the BMW, and the speed at which both of them jumped out of the SUV once it stopped. This lined up with the prosecution's opening narrative, and Alan's testimony was built to reinforce it point by point. He placed Boatwright at the driver's side window holding the rifle, Newsom moving toward the chain and then the bag, and Newsom returning to the SUV with it secured. Then came the critical moment.
All right, what kind of gun did Boatwright have?
Something like small, real small.
Okay, well, like that, like a rifle or a handgun?
Rifle.
Shots fired immediately after, with Alan stating there was no provocation whatsoever at that point in time. Alan testified directly that as Newsom was grabbing the bag, the shots rang out. He identified Michael Boatwright as the shooter, saying Boatwright fired 2 or 3 times. He stated Unfroy was positioned on the left side of the vehicle and estimated the entire confrontation lasted around 3 minutes. On the drive away from Riva, he said the group learned that Froy had died. Boatwright turned the music up like he was trying to tune everything else out in the room. Defense attorneys spent days trying to tear his testimony apart piece by piece. They called him a 12-time felon and a career liar, someone acting purely out of self-preservation. They pushed the idea that he changed his story between the 2018 interrogation and the 2023 trial just to match whatever prosecutors needed at the time. Boatwright's attorney came in especially aggressive, hitting Alan with non-stop pressure. Every inconsistency, every hesitation, every "I think" and "I guess" from years earlier was dragged right back into the spotlight. Alan didn't break under it. He admitted straight up that he wanted a lighter sentence and that he was not a reliable person by any standard measure. But he also made it clear where he stood, saying he wanted a reduced sentence, yes, but also that he had real remorse. He described sitting in the courtroom, seeing people crying, and trying to do his best to bring justice for Unfroy's family, friends, and fans. That emotional weight stayed in the room as he spoke. The defense still had a major problem they couldn't ignore. Every key detail Allen gave could be checked against physical evidence, and it kept lining up. DNA taken from black neoprene masks bought inside Riva and used during the robbery matched Dedrick Williams with odds described as rarer than 1 in 8.31 octillion. Another mask linked Boatwright's DNA with odds rarer than 1 in 9.29 nonillion. These numbers were presented in court as part of the forensic analysis. Those findings came from forensic analyst Nicole IN from the Broward County Crime Lab. Boatwright's phone also showed up at the exact time of the shooting, and records showed it had Bluetooth paired with the rented Dodge Journey. On top of that, a box of .22 caliber bullets recovered from Boatwright's home was missing exactly 4 rounds, the same number of shots fired at Enfroy during the incident. A separate .22 caliber bullet was recovered from Williams's home, adding another layer investigators couldn't ignore. Boatwright's fingerprints were also lifted from the exterior driver's door of Enfroy's BMW, directly tying physical contact to the vehicle at the center of the case. Boatwright's phone data added even more pressure. Records showed searches tied to legal exposure after the shooting, including terms like accessory to murder, signaling panic in the aftermath of what had already happened. Then Williams's girlfriend, Elle Carter, stepped in with explosive testimony. She told the jury that Williams confessed to orchestrating the robbery and murder.
Okay, what happens is when they see him?
Chucky cuts him off.
Okay, so you guys had to talk about something.
It was basically me talking to him. I was just, I'm gonna go to jail for the rest of my life. They're like, you'll be all right. It's not gonna happen to you.
And then allegedly pressured her to sign a false affidavit claiming he was not the getaway driver. She refused, and that refusal became a key moment in her testimony. Meanwhile, inside the holding cells during the trial, tensions boiled over. A Broward sheriff's deputy observed Trayvon Newsom yelling at Allen during transport, calling him a police, a sellout, and accusing him of working with the white man. Allen later testified about this intimidation attempt, and it quickly became one of the most talked about moments in court proceedings. Defense attorneys also tried to introduce a controversial alternate theory involving rapper Drake, pointing to a long-standing public feud between Enfroy and Drake as a possible motive. But investigators and witnesses shut that idea down completely, dismissing it as irrelevant to the facts. Allen maintained firmly that no one else was involved and that the crime was a spontaneous robbery with no outside planning or orchestration. During deliberations, jurors requested access to nearly 200 text messages pulled from the defendants' phones. They spent more than 27 hours over 8 days reviewing the case, long enough that online speculation about a possible hung jury began circulating widely. Legal commentators pointed to the sheer complexity: 3 defendants, 3 defense teams, and a massive body of evidence all colliding in one trial. The jurors had to break everything down one thread at a time, piece by piece, like they were untangling something deliberately knotted up. Nearly 200 text messages alone meant hours of reading, scrolling, and rereading every detail. Those long deliberations weren't a sign of a weak case from prosecutors. They were a sign the jury was treating every single detail like it mattered. No shortcuts, no rush, just pressure building in silence. Then on March 20th, 2023, the courtroom shifted the moment the jury walked back in. Guilty. All 3 defendants. All counts: first-degree murder and armed robbery with a firearm. As the verdict was read out loud, Michael Boatwright turned toward Enfroy's family in the gallery and blew a kiss right in their direction, a moment that instantly locked into the room's memory. Sentencing came later on April 6, 2023. When 3 men stood before Judge Michael A. Usan, waiting to hear the exact number that would define the rest of their lives. And that number came back the same for all 3. For Trayvon Newsom and Dedrick Williams, it was life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mandatory, final, and non-negotiable, delivered with cold procedural clarity. For Boatwright, the consequences went even further, tied directly to the role prosecutors said he played in the shooting itself. He received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus an additional consecutive 30 years. Judge Usan looked directly at Boatwright and made it clear what the court believed had happened that day. "You turned a robbery into a murder," he said. "And when you stood there and fired that weapon, you didn't just end one life, you effectively ended 5 lives, including your own. You will spend the rest of your life in prison in a cell that has a stainless steel slab attached to the wall. That's your bed. And next to it is a stainless steel sink and a stainless steel toilet," the judge said. "And one day they'll come open that cell in the morning and you will have passed on. Only then will you have served your sentence." Boatwright sat there and showed absolutely nothing. No reaction, no shift, just stillness under the weight of it all. 6 weeks later, on May 17th, 2023, Robert Allen stood in that same courtroom for his own sentencing. This time, the energy felt different. The room wasn't just hearing punishment, it was hearing acknowledgement for the first time in a meaningful way. Allen directly addressed what had happened and who it had impacted, speaking straight to the consequences. He told the judge, "If I have to die in prison, and so be it, I know the risk I was taking. Let justice be served. Please forgive me." The statement landed hard because it was the first time the court heard something resembling full acceptance instead of denial or deflection. Judge Usan pointed out that Allen had shown what he described as genuine remorse, something noticeably absent from the 3 defendants sentenced before him. The judge also highlighted that Allen's cooperation went beyond just this case, noting he had provided information that helped establish probable cause in an unrelated ZMF gang cold case murder. Prosecutors further told the court that his cooperation had placed him at serious personal risk due to gang connections tied to those investigations. Enfroy's family had been consulted before the plea agreement was finalized, and they ultimately accepted the arrangement, bringing that final stage of the case into closure through the court process itself. Allen was ultimately sentenced to 7 years in prison, with credit for roughly 4 years, 9 months, and 21 days already served in pretrial detention. That calculation dramatically reduced his remaining time, leaving him with about 2 years left in practice. For all intents and purposes, much of his sentence had already been completed before the final judgment was even fully felt. On October 26, 2023, Robert Allen, the 4th man, was released from prison. He stepped out into a heavily structured supervision plan, 20 years of probation, a secured residence requirement, weekly phone check-ins with his probation officer, mandatory in-person meetings every 6 weeks, and a strict court order forbidding any contact with Enfroy's family. He was effectively placed under long-term monitoring, with very limited room to re-enter public life in any meaningful way. For the most part, the public attention began to fade afterward, and the world slowly moved on. Then came October 2024, when attention snapped back sharply. From inside Martin Correctional Institution in Florida, where Boatwright was housed after conviction, a post surfaced that reignited everything. Despite being incarcerated, he managed to access Instagram and publish a message that echoed the same defiance he had shown throughout the case. "I'm not sorry for nothing I did," he wrote, also claiming he was not an evil person. The post spread instantly, reaching the family of Enfroy, who publicly responded and pulling the case back into public focus all over again. Fans who had followed the case since 2018 saw it resurface in real time, while others encountering it for the first time reacted across platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. The irony of the post was hard to miss, that the same man whose own phone had already helped seal his fate through searches, location pings, and Bluetooth connections to a getaway vehicle was now once again using a phone to broadcast his mindset from in one prison. A system that had already been built on digital traces was still echoing back through the same technology. 1 month later, in November 2024, Dedrick Williams took a different approach. His attorneys filed an appeal brief arguing that Drake, a Toronto rapper whose alleged public feud with Enfroy had been mentioned during the original trial, should be reconsidered as a possible alternate suspect. The filing pointed to older social media activity and referenced past tension between the 2 artists as grounds for reasonable doubt. However, that argument had already been addressed long before. Drake had been subpoenaed during the original trial and later excused by the judge, and investigators had already ruled out any celebrity involvement after reviewing the full scope of evidence. Allen had also testified under oath that no one outside the group was involved in the crime itself. The appeal did not introduce any new evidence that changed that foundation. As of early 2026, the convictions remain in place and have not been overturned. Williams continues serving life without parole at Wakulla Correctional Institution. Boatwright's separate direct appeal, filed under Michael Boatwright v. State of Florida, case number 4D23-0975, was denied by the Florida District Court of Appeal in 2025, leaving the original verdicts fully intact at that stage of review. The court ultimately rejected arguments around severance from co-defendants and broader challenges to the sufficiency of the evidence. The conviction stood, the sentences stood, and the appellate path closed without overturning the core outcome of the case. Meanwhile, Robert Allen's life had shifted into something far quieter. By September 2025, the court granted him permission to travel across the United States for work as a licensed CDL truck driver, marking a controlled but functional step into supervised reintegration. His address remains sealed, his probation is still active, and no violations or new charges have been reported. In practice, he moves through the country on monitored terms, with probation continuing until 2043, driving routes across the United States under strict supervision. Then, in March 2026, the case resurfaced again, not because of any new legal development, but because the internet brought it back into circulation. Posts spread across Facebook, Instagram, and forums, recycling mugshots, headlines, and old news clips under viral captions like XXXTentacion, murder suspect Robert Allen released after 5 years. Many of these posts got the timeline wrong, suggesting a 2025 release even though Allen had actually been released in October 2023. The outrage that followed wasn't really about dates, it was about the story itself resurfacing. Once again, the same questions spread across platforms. What does justice actually look like in a case like this? The legal record is clear, documented, and consistent. But public reaction keeps circling back to that unresolved tension between sentencing, cooperation, and outcome. Lead prosecutor Pascal Sillis addressed that perspective directly, laying out the state's position in plain terms within the record of the case. In closing, arguments built on silence and planning in the dark don't come with clean witnesses or easy answers. Plans hatched in chaos don't leave behind angels to explain them, only co-conspirators who speak when everything is already falling apart. Co-conspirator testimony comes from co-conspirators, and without Allen, the masks could have stayed anonymous, the roles debated forever, and the case stuck in the kind of legal law. Uncertainty that slowly weakens over time. The deal became the turning point that allowed the other three to be sentenced the way they were. The human reality behind it is simple and heavy. Anne Froy was 20 years old, shopping for motorcycles, with $50,000 legally withdrawn from his own bank account. 4 men identified his car, confirmed his identity, bought masks while he was nearby, waited 8 minutes and 35 seconds in a parking lot, blocked his exit, robbed him at gunpoint, and then shot him 3 times after the robbery had already ended. One of those 4 men, the one who once said it was a bad idea, but still stayed involved, is now driving a commercial truck somewhere in the United States today. The other 3 are serving life sentences in cells with stainless steel beds with no way out. Robert Allen broke his silence first in an interrogation room, then again on the witness stand, and finally one more time in a sentencing hearing where remorse was accepted by the court as genuine. The others never did the same. In every public moment, they denied, deflected, or stayed silent, and the consequences locked in around them as the verdict, sentencing, and even later online posts continue to define the outcome of the case. That's what speaking cost Allen, and what silence cost everyone else. And that is where the story leaves us, after everything that unfolded. If you watch this all the way through, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the case.